Pablo Emilio Escobar Gaviria was a Colombian drug lord and narcoterrorist who was the founder and sole leader of the Medellín Cartel. Dubbed the King of Cocaine, Escobar is the wealthiest criminal in history, having amassed an estimated net worth of $30 billion by the time of his death, equivalent to $70 billion as of 2022, while his drug cartel monopolized the cocaine trade into the United States in the 1980s and early 1990s. Born in Rio Negro and raised in Medellín, Escobar studied briefly at Universidad Autónoma Latinoamericana of Medellín, but left without graduating. He instead began engaging in criminal activity, selling illegal cigarettes and fake lottery tickets, as well as participating in motor vehicle theft. In the early 1970s, he began to work for various drug smugglers, often kidnapping and holding people for ransom. In 1976, Escobar founded the Medellín Cartel, which distributed powder cocaine, and established the first smuggling routes from Peru, Bolivia, and Ecuador, through Colombia and eventually into the United States. Escobar's infiltration into the U.S. created exponential demand for cocaine, and by the 1980s it was estimated Escobar led monthly shipments of 70 to 80 tons of cocaine into the country from Colombia. As a result, he quickly became one of the richest people in the world, but constantly battled rival cartels domestically and abroad, leading to massacres and the murders of police officers, judges, locals, and prominent politicians, making Colombia the murder capital of the world. In the 1982 Colombian parliamentary election, Escobar was elected as an alternate member of the Chamber of Representatives as part of the liberal alternative movement. Through this, he was responsible for community projects such as the construction of houses and football fields, which gained him popularity among the locals of the towns that he frequented. However, Escobar's political ambitions were thwarted by the Colombian and U.S. governments, who routinely pushed for his arrest, with Escobar widely believed to have orchestrated the DOS building and Avianca Flight 203 bombings in retaliation. In 1991, Escobar surrendered to authorities, and was sentenced to 5 years imprisonment on a host of charges, but struck a deal of no extradition with Colombian President Cesar Gaviria, with the ability of being housed in his own, self-built prison, La Catedral. In 1992, Escobar escaped and went into hiding when authorities attempted to move him to a more standard holding facility, leading to a nationwide manhunt. As a result, the Medellín Cartel crumbled, and in 1993, Escobar was killed in his hometown by Colombian National Police, a day after his 44th birthday. Escobar's legacy remains controversial. While many denounce the heinous nature of his crimes, he was seen as a Robin Hood-like figure for many in Colombia, as he provided many amenities to the poor. His killing was mourned and his funeral attended by over 25,000 people. Additionally, his private estate, Hacienda Nápoles, has been transformed into a theme park. His life has also served as inspiration for or has been dramatized widely in film, television, and in music. Early life. Pablo Emilio Escobar Gaviria was born on December 1, 1949 in Rio Negro, Antioquia Department. He was the third child of 7 children and grew up in the neighboring city of Medellín. His father was a small farmer and his mother was a teacher. Escobar left high school in 1966 just before his 17th birthday, and 2 years later he returned to high school with his cousin Gustavo Gaviria. At this time, the hard life on the streets of Medellín had polished them into gangster bullies in the eyes of teachers. The two dropped out of school after more than a year, but Escobar, who did not give up, briefly became autonomous in Latin America by forging high school diplomas. Studied in college with the goal of becoming a criminal lawyer and politician, and eventually president, but had to give up because of lack of money. Criminal career. Cocaine distribution. Escobar began his criminal career in 1966. Escobar is rumored to have started his criminal career with his gang by stealing tombstones, sandblasting their inscriptions, and reselling them, though his most likely first crime was street fraud. After dropping out of school, Escobar began to join car theft gangs, and at the age of 20 was already a household name for car thieves. He and his gang stole cars and dismantled them to sell their parts, and with enough money on hand, Escobar bribed officials to launder his loot. While arrest records have been lost, Escobar apparently sat in a Medellín prison for several months before his 20th birthday. Escobar soon became involved in violent crime, employing criminals to kidnap people who owed him money and demand ransoms, sometimes tearing up tickets even when Escobar received the ransom. His most famous kidnapping victim was businessman Diego Echeverria, who was kidnapped and eventually killed in the summer of 1971. Escobar received a $50,000 ransom from the Echeverria family. His gang also became famous because of it. Medellín Group. Escobar had been involved in organized crime for a decade when the cocaine trade began to spread in Colombia in the mid-1970s. One of Colombia's first drug dealers was Fabio Restrepo, who shipped about 40 to 60 kilograms of cocaine to Miami once or twice a year. Under Escobar's mastermind, Restrepo was assassinated in 1975, and Escobar seized his market and business. Escobar's meteoric rise also caught the attention of the Colombian Security Service, who arrested him in May 1976 on his return from drug trafficking in Ecuador. DOS agents found 39 kilograms of cocaine in the spare tire of Escobar's car. Escobar managed to change the first judge in the lawsuit and bribed the second judge, so he was released along with other prisoners. The following year, the agent who arrested Escobar was assassinated. Escobar continued to collude with law enforcement in the same fashion. His strategy came to be known as silver or lead, or money or bullets. Although the Medellín Group was only established in the early 1970s, it expanded after Escobar met several drug lords on a farm in April 1978, and by the end of 1978 they had transported some 19,000 kilograms of cocaine to the United States. Rise to prominence. Soon, the demand for cocaine greatly increased in the United States, which led to Escobar organizing more smuggling shipments, routes, and distribution networks in South Florida, California, Puerto Rico, and other parts of the country. He and cartel co-founder Carlos Leder worked together to develop a new transshipment point in the Bahamas, an island called Norman's Cay about 350 kilometers southeast of the Florida coast. According to his brother, Escobar did not purchase Norman's Cay, it was instead a sole venture of Leder's. Escobar and Robert Vesco purchased most of the land on the island, which included a 1-kilometer airstrip, a harbor, a hotel, houses, boats, and aircraft, and they built a refrigerated warehouse to store the cocaine. From 1978 to 1982, this was used as a central smuggling route for the Medellín Cartel. With the enormous profits generated by this route, Escobar was soon able to purchase 20 square kilometers of land in Antioquia for several $1 million, on which he built the Hacienda Nápoles. The luxury house he created contained a zoo, a lake, a sculpture garden, a private bull ring, and other diversions for his family and the cartel. Escobar at the height of his power. Escobar was also involved in philanthropy in Colombia and paid handsomely for the staff of his cocaine lab. Escobar spent millions developing some of Medellín's poorest neighborhoods. He helped build roads, power lines, and soccer fields. He also built housing complexes for the homeless. Escobar also entered politics in the 1970s and participated in and supported the formation of the Liberal Party of Colombia. In 1982, he successfully entered the Colombian Congress. Although he is only an alternate, he is automatically granted parliamentary immunity and the right to a diplomatic passport under Colombian law. At the same time, Escobar was gradually becoming a public figure, and because of his charitable work, he was known as Robin Hood Paisa, the Robin Hood of northeastern Colombia. He himself said in an interview that his fortune came from a bicycle rental company he set up when he was 16 years old. In Congress, the new Minister of Justice, Rodrigo Lara Bonilla, had become Escobar's opponent, accusing Escobar of criminal activity from the very first day of Congress. Escobar's arrest in 1976 was investigated by Lara Bonilla's subordinates. A few months later, Liberal leader Luis Carlos Garland expelled Escobar from the party. Although Escobar fought back, he announced his retirement from politics in January 1984. 3 months later, Lara Bonilla was murdered. The Colombian judiciary had been a target of Escobar throughout the mid-1980s, and while bribing and murdering several judges, the wanted Escobar made a request to the Colombian government in the fall of 1985 if the government he will surrender without extradition to the United States. The proposal was initially answered in the negative, and Escobar subsequently founded and implicitly supported the Los Extraditable organization, which aims to fight extradition policy, and was even accused of participating in an effort to prevent the Colombian Supreme Court from studying the constitutionality of Colombia's extradition treaty with the United States. In support of the November 6, 1985, far-left guerrilla movement that attacked the Colombian Judiciary building and killed half of the justices of the Supreme Court. In late 1986, Colombia's Supreme Court declared the previous extradition treaty illegal because of the war because it was signed by a presidential delegation, not the president, though Escobar's victory over the judiciary was short-lived, with new President Bilgilo Barcio Vargas quickly renewed his agreement with the United States. Escobar still held a grudge against Luis Carlos Galán, who kicked him out of politics, and was assassinated on August 18, 1989. At Escobar's orders. Escobar then planted a bomb on Avianca Flight 203 in an attempt to assassinate Garland's successor, Cesar Gaviria Trujillo, who missed the plane and survived, but was on board. All 107 people were killed in the blast. Because 2 Americans were also killed in the bombing, the U.S. government began to intervene directly. La Catedral Prison. Personal life. Family and relationships. In March 1976, the 26-year-old Escobar married Maria Victoria Henao, who was 15. The relationship was discouraged by the Henao family, who considered Escobar socially inferior. The pair eloped. They had 2 children, Juan Pablo and Manuela. In 2007, the journalist Virginia Vallejo published her memoir Amando a Pablo, Odiando a Escobar, in which she describes her romantic relationship with Escobar and the links of her lover with several presidents, Caribbean dictators, and high-profile politicians. Her book inspired the movie Loving Pablo. A drug distributor, Griselda Blanco, is also reported to have conducted a clandestine, but passionate, relationship with Escobar. Several items in her diary link him with the nicknames Coke de mi Rey and Paula Blanca. Properties. After becoming wealthy, Escobar created or bought numerous residences and safe houses, with the Hacienda Napolas gaining significant notoriety. The luxury house contained a colonial house, a sculpture park, and a complete zoo with animals from various continents, including elephants, exotic birds, giraffes, and hippopotamuses. Escobar had also planned to construct a Greek-style citadel near it, and though construction of the citadel was started, it was never finished. Escobar also owned a home in the U.S. under his own name, a 6,500 square foot, pink, waterfront mansion situated at 5860 North Bay Road in Miami Beach, Florida. The 4-bedroom estate, built in 1948 on Biscayne Bay, was seized by the U.S. federal government in the 1980s. Later, the dilapidated property was owned by Christian de Bourdoir, proprietor of the Chicken Kitchen fast food chain, who had bought it in 2014. Debordwar would later hire a documentary film crew and professional treasure hunters to search the edifice before and after demolition, for anything related to Escobar or his cartel. They would find unusual holes in floors and walls, as well as a safe that was stolen from its hole in the marble flooring before it could be properly examined. Escobar also owned a huge Caribbean getaway on Isla Grande, the largest of the cluster of the 27 coral cluster islands comprising Islas del Rosario, located about 35 kilometers from Cartagena. The compound, now half demolished and overtaken by vegetation and wild animals, featured a mansion, apartments, courtyards, a large swimming pool, a helicopter landing pad, reinforced windows, tiled floors, and a large but unfinished building to the side of the mansion. Death. Escobar faced threats from the Colombian police, the U.S. government and his rival, the Cali cartel. On December 2, 1993, Escobar was found in a house in a middle-class residential area of Medellín by Colombian special forces using technology provided by the United States. Police tried to arrest Escobar, but the situation quickly escalated to an exchange of gunfire. Escobar was shot and killed while trying to escape from the roof. He was hit by bullets in the torso and feet, and a bullet which struck him in the ear, killing him. This sparked debate about whether he killed himself or whether he was shot dead. Aftermath of his death. Soon after Escobar's death and the subsequent fragmentation of the Medellín cartel, the cocaine market became dominated by the rival Cali cartel until the mid-1990s, when its leaders were either killed or captured by the Colombian government. The Robin Hood image that Escobar had cultivated maintained a lasting influence in Medellín. Many there, especially many of the city's poor whom Escobar had aided while he was alive, mourned his death, and over 25,000 people attended his funeral. Some of them consider him a saint and pray to him for receiving divine help. Escobar was buried at the Monte Sacro Cemetery. Virginia Vallejo's testimony. On July 4, 2006, Virginia Vallejo, a television anchorwoman romantically involved with Escobar from 1983 to 1987, offered Attorney General Mario Iguaran her testimony in the trial against former Senator Alberto Santofimio, who was accused of conspiracy in the 1989 assassination of presidential candidate Luis Carlos Galán. Iguaran acknowledged that, although Vallejo had contacted his office on July 4, the judge had decided to close the trial on July 9, several weeks before the prospective closing date. The action was seen as too late. On July 18, 2006, Vallejo was taken to the United States on a special flight of the Drug Enforcement Administration, for safety and security reasons due to her cooperation in high-profile criminal cases. On July 24, a video in which Vallejo had accused Santofimio of instigating Escobar to eliminate presidential candidate Galán was aired by RCN Television of Colombia. The video was seen by 14 million people, and was instrumental for the reopened case of Galán's assassination. On August 31, 2011, Santofimio was sentenced to 24 years in prison for his role in the crime. Role in the Palace of Justice siege. Relatives. Escobar's widow, son, and daughter fled Colombia in 1995 after failing to find a country that would grant them asylum. Despite Escobar's numerous and continual infidelities, Maria remained supportive of her husband. Members of the Cali cartel even replayed their recordings of her conversations with Pablo for their wives to demonstrate how a woman should behave. This attitude proved to be the reason the cartel did not kill her and her children after Pablo's death, although the group demanded millions of dollars in reparations for Escobar's war against them. Henao even successfully negotiated for her son's life by personally guaranteeing he would not seek revenge against the cartel or participate in the drug trade. After escaping first to Mozambique, then to Brazil, the family settled in Argentina. Living under her assumed name, Henao became a successful real estate entrepreneur until one of her business associates discovered her true identity, and Henao absconded with her earnings. Local media were alerted, and after being exposed as Escobar's widow, Henao was imprisoned for 18 months while her finances were investigated. Ultimately, authorities were unable to link her funds to illegal activity, and she was released. According to her son, Henao fell in love with Escobar because of his naughty smile. The way he looked at it was affectionate and sweet. A great lover. I fell in love with his desire to help people and his compassion for their hardship. We drive to places where he dreamed of building schools for the poor. From beginning, he was always a gentleman. Maria Victoria Henao de Escobar, with her new identity as Maria Isabel Santos Caballero, continues to live in Buenos Aires with her son and daughter. On June 5, 2018, the Argentine federal judge Nestor Barril accused her and her son, Sebastian Mariquin Santos, of money laundering with two Colombian drug traffickers. The judge ordered the seizing of assets for about $1 million each. Argentinian filmmaker Nicolas Antel's documentary Sins of My Father chronicles Mariquin's efforts to seek forgiveness, on behalf of his father, from the sons of Rodrigo Lara, Colombia's justice minister who was assassinated in 1984, as well as from the sons of Luis Carlos Galán, the presidential candidate who was assassinated in 1989. The film was shown at the 2010 Sundance Film Festival and premiered in the US on HBO in October 2010. In 2014, Mariquin published Pablo Escobar, My Father under his birth name. The book provides a first-hand insight into details of his father's life and describes the fundamentally disintegrating effect of his death upon the family. Mariquin aimed to publish the book in hopes to resolve any inaccuracies regarding his father's excursions during the 1990s. Escobar's sister, Luz Maria Escobar, also made multiple gestures in attempts to make amends for the drug baron's crimes. These include making public statements in the press, leaving letters on the graves of his victims, and on the 20th anniversary of his death organizing a public memorial for his victims. Escobar's body was exhumed on October 28, 2006 at the request of some of his relatives in order to take a DNA sample to confirm the alleged paternity of an illegitimate child and remove all doubt about the identity of the body that had been buried next to his parents for 12 years. A video of the exhumation was broadcast by RCN, angering Mariquin, who accused his uncle, Roberto Escobar, and cousin, Nicolas Escobar, of being merchants of death by allowing the video to air. Hacienda Nápoles. After Escobar's death, the ranch, zoo, and citadel at Hacienda Nápoles were given by the government to low-income families under a law called Extinción de Dominio. The property has been converted into a theme park surrounded by 4 luxury hotels overlooking the zoo. Escobar Inc. In 2014, Roberto Escobar founded Escobar Inc. with Olaf K. Gustafsson and registered successor in interest rights for his brother Pablo Escobar in California, United States. Olaf K. Gustafsson is a Swedish YouTuber with 310,000 subscribers as of June 29, 2022. Hippos. Escobar kept 4 hippos in a private menagerie at Hacienda Nápoles. They were deemed too difficult to seize and move after Escobar's death, and hence left on the untended estate. By 2007, the animals had multiplied to 16 and had taken to roaming the area for food in the nearby Magdalena River. In 2009, 2 adults and 1 calf escaped the herd and, after attacking humans and killing cattle, one of the adults was killed by hunters under authorization of the local authorities. As of early 2014, 40 hippos have been reported to exist in Puerto Triunfo, Antioquia Department, from the original 4 belonging to Escobar. Without management, the population size is likely to more than double in the next decade. The National Geographic Channel produced a documentary about them titled Cocaine Hippos. A report published in a Yale student magazine noted that local environmentalists are campaigning to protect the animals, although there is no clear plan for what will happen to them. In 2018, National Geographic published another article on the hippos which found disagreement among environmentalists on whether they were having a positive or negative impact, but that conservationists and locals, particularly those in the tourism industry, were mostly in support of their continued presence. By October 2021, the Colombian government had started a program to sterilize the hippos using a chemical to make them infertile. Apartment demolition. On February 22, 2019, at 11:53 a.m. local time, Medellín authorities demolished the 6-story Edificio Monaco apartment complex in the El Poblado neighborhood where, according to retired Colombian General Rosso José Serrano, Escobar planned some of his most brazen attacks. The building was initially built for Escobar's wife but was gutted by a Cali cartel car bomb in 1988 and had remained unoccupied ever since, becoming an attraction to foreign tourists seeking out Escobar's physical legacy. Mayor Federico Gutiérrez had been pushing to raise the building and erect in its place a park honoring the thousands of cartel victims, including 4 presidential candidates and some 500 police officers. Colombian President Iván Duque said the demolition means that history is not going to be written in terms of the perpetrators but by recognizing the victims, hoping the demolition would showcase that the city had evolved significantly and had more to offer than the legacy left by the cartels. In popular culture. Books. Escobar has been the subject of several books, including the following. Escobar, by Roberto Escobar, written by his brother, shows how he became infamous and ultimately died. Escobar Gaviria, Roberto. My brother Pablo Escobar. Escobar, Incorporated, ISBN 978-0692706374. Kings of Cocaine, by Guy Goliata, retells the history and operations of the Medellín Cartel, and Escobar's role within it. Killing Pablo, The Hunt for the World's Greatest Outlaw, by Mark Bowden, relates how Escobar was killed and his cartel dismantled by U.S. Special Forces and Intelligence, the Colombian military, and Los Peeps. Pablo Escobar, My Father, by Juan Pablo Escobar, translated by Andrea Rosenberg. Pablo Escobar, Beyond Narcos, by Sean Atwood, tells the story of Pablo and the Medellín Cartel in the context of the failed war on drugs, ISBN 978-1537296302. American Made, Who Killed Barry Seal? Pablo Escobar or George H. W. Bush, by Sean Atwood, tells Pablo's story as a suspect in the murder of CIA pilot Barry Seal, ISBN 978-1537637198. Loving Pablo, Hating Escobar by Virginia Vallejo, originally published by Penguin Random House in Spanish in 2007, and later translated to 16 languages. News of a Kidnapping, non-fiction 1996 book by Gabriel Garcia Marquez, and published in English in 1997. Films. 2 major feature films on Escobar, and Killing Pablo, were announced in 2007. Details about them, and additional films about Escobar, are listed below. Blow, a 2001 American biographical film based on George Young, a member of the Medellín Cartel. Escobar was portrayed by Cliff Curtis. Pablo Escobar, The King of Coke is a TV movie documentary by National Geographic, featuring archival footage and commentary by stakeholders. Escobar was delayed because of producer Oliver Stone's involvement with the George W. Bush biopic W. As of 2008, the release date of Escobar remained unconfirmed. Regarding the film, Stone said, "This is a great project about a fascinating man who took on the system. I think I have to thank Scarface, and maybe even Ari Gold." Killing Pablo was supposedly in development for several years, directed by Joe Carnahan. It was to be based on Mark Bowden's 2001 book of the same title, which in turn was based on his 31-part Philadelphia Inquirer series of articles on the subject. The cast was reported to include Christian Bale as Major Steve Jacoby and Venezuelan actor Edgar Ramirez as Escobar. In December 2008, Bob Urey, producer of Killing Pablo, filed for bankruptcy. Escobar, Paradise Lost, a romantic thriller in which a naive Canadian surfer falls in love with a girl who turns out to be Escobar's niece. Loving Pablo, Spanish film based on Virginia Vallejo's book Loving Pablo, Hating Escobar with Javier Bardem as Escobar, and Penelope Cruz as Virginia Vallejo. American-made, American biographical film based on Barry Seal, Escobar was portrayed by Mauricio Mejia.